Oakland Boogaloo reunion. If you wasn't there, you missed out. Nah, I just wanted to share some thoughts with y'all. Man, what an event. What an amazing place the Bay Area is, steeped in culture and history. Shout out to Levon and Bryce, Playboy Sticks, gentlemen of production, Dove for emceeing. It was an incredible event. And shout out to all the OGs that pulled up, the ones that are still with us. Much love and respect. Rest in peace to the ones that we lost this past year. It's a crazy time. It's such an important time. And I said this the last Boogaloo reunion that I went to, which was before COVID. That is such an important time in history because we have these OGs with us. And it's so crucial that we spend time with them, ask questions, witness their history, witness their stories, get their perspective on things. One, it provides so much insight into where this dance is from, how it was created, the culture in which it comes from, and what led people to move this way. It's so important. The Bay Area is a key. Arguably the key in most of these dances that we do. LA is another hub that a lot of people came and everything jumped off from here too. So, the West Coast in general is so important. And it's so hard to talk about these things because I even find myself now like I'm walking on eggshells by talking about people's stories, and because it's like you're choosing a side in history, or in the street dance world, it's like it's become so toxic over the decades that we're arguing over these narratives and like these definitions of words and things, and thinking about and these are just thoughts, but we're arguing over this history, we're arguing over these words. And I made a video in the past and about saying, let's not get caught up in these words. And the thing is, this is my thought at the moment, and it could change, but when you talk about defining something, say popping, when you take one person's definition of the word, you're negating, you're ignoring, you're silencing the other stories of people that use that word. So this comes down to language in general, right? That words evolve through time to mean different things. Look at any culture in history, and you talk about how words have changed throughout time, right? They come to mean different things. So speaking right is, when we talk about speaking, the point of language is to communicate an idea. So the question is, do you understand what the person means by that word? This is the basics of language, is that we use our mouth and sound to communicate what's in our mind, or we try our best to express ourselves through this opening in the front of our face. It's a crazy thing, but so much gets lost and miscommunicated in this day and age, and then we're fighting over specific definitions where a lot of these words were used as adjectives to describe what somebody was seeing. For example, the idea between popping and hitting, and what is the difference between them? Well, you could talk about the technique, right? But the technique of both of these words is dependent on who's talking about them, right? So somebody might have the concept of hitting as like, oh, I'm hitting a wall. So I'm like, that requires a stop, versus a pop that doesn't require a stop. And this is just how they're conceptualizing it in their mind. And these are really basic words, but they get defined in all these different ways depending on where you're from, right? And so this begs the question, who defines what a word means? So if we talk about slang, right? Just a basic example is like the word lit, okay? So it's lit, L-I-T, it's lit. Well, that, to say something is lit is like, it can mean a bunch of things. Well, it's lit up, like it's like we lit the candle, right? Or the party's lit, which means it's like, what? It doesn't have anything to do with fire necessarily. It just means it's wild, it's popping, right? The party is popping. Now, that doesn't mean that people are popping at the party, but it means the party is dope. And what I mean by dope is not actual drugs. I mean dope, as in it's good, right? You get what I'm saying with language? So when we argue over these definitions, and I hate the way I'm talking right now, honestly. When I hear myself talking, I'm like, well, you talk with so much confidence, you need to chill. But when I'm talking about language, I'm starting to become so convinced over these arguments, over these definitions. So, because when you define something and you say, hey, dope doesn't mean good, dope means drugs, dope means this, dope means that. And it's like, but I've been using the word dope to describe something I like for so long that now you're saying that what I said was all those things were drugs, right? And by drugs, I don't mean drugs like pharmaceuticals, I mean street drugs. And drugs has a negative connotation, right? So what if we just called it medicine, right? So these language things become so difficult to navigate, and we're kind of stuck in the street dance world where we're trying to define things. But we cannot, what we should be doing is asking questions about the stories of how these people experience these words, and not try to define them for our own benefit. Because when we start to define words, now I hope, you know what, forget it. I'm stepping on toes right now. But look, this is, when you define something, it becomes economic. It becomes, okay, my narrative is better than yours. And I'm gonna market my narrative to fit my business model. I'm gonna market my narrative to coin these definitions to propel my business model. Damn it, I said it out loud. So look, this is just one opinion, and this is just some thoughts, right? But is that what's happening? Is that how we're gonna remember these people? Is this how we're gonna remember this culture, this time period? Is that we're gonna coin words to our own liking? Or are we gonna take and listen to all the stories and cross-correlate them to understand what these people meant by the words, right? We can go back to biblical times, and whether it's, you're even talking about Hebrew, or you're talking about Greek, or you're talking about Latin, when you start to translate these things, you can't just read the Bible in English, right? If you really want to study theology, you go back to these languages that it originated from, and you can't put English words to them. You have to go back into that culture. You have to go and study history. You have to study these language to understand the context in which they use this word, right? Why did they believe in Christian? Why did they say no sex before marriage in Christianity? Well, that might have had a practical benefit back then to know where your kids were from, right? So this is going down a rabbit hole, but like, and then we do no sex before marriage. In today's society, well, maybe it doesn't make as much sense, where it's all contextual. What did they mean when they talked about love in the Bible, and what was that original word? So all this sort of stuff, I'm just tying it back to religion always, right? Because that's kind of what I studied. So when you think about language, we have to think about the context in which this stuff was used, and we have to think about who are we leaving out by adopting a certain narrative around a specific word. I know this all started from the Oakland Boogaloo reunion, and this brings me back to that, in the sense that when you really talk to these people about their experience of that time, it's so enriching. It's like you're watching, like when these people talk to you, for me, it's like I'm at a theater, like they're painting the picture for me, not only with their words, but energetically, the way that they move, the way that they're describing stuff, bang, like everything is so passionate, and there's always been this kind of narrative of like, did this come first or that come first? It's like, why are we on this right now? Look, we're such a niche community already, and all this is division, and it's stopping people from showing up and having conversations. Like, what are we doing here? Like, life is short, and it's extra short when you're 60 years old. Like, so this time is fine. People have been so subscribed to a narrative that they've chosen a side and don't want to show up to have conversations. When you talk to these OGs, it's like there's so much wisdom in their words. And there's always going to be people that are arguing over history, and that's just in every field. It doesn't have to be dance. It's like, it could be anything. You could be arguing about history. We could argue about memories. We could both have the same experience, like have gone through the same experience and have a different memory of that moment. Our memories are terrible, and they're highly influenced by the people that we surround ourselves with. We remember things different, like, oh, you remember that? And I'm like, no, but I can imagine that, but now it's part of my memory, and that's the fact, right? So you have to think about how history is created and how can we create a better picture of what happened. And we're never going to be able to go back and live that, but we can do our best to connect with the people that were there, and we can do our best to try and understand what they mean and how they talk, and also like understand maybe the bitterness or the competition, or understand all those, the negative and the positive aspects. But when I went to the Bay, there was nobody salty over history. It was a joyful time where people were coming together, and it felt like this was, this once a year event where people can feel celebrated, right? As they should be. Like how much they were the reason, like what we're able to do today. Like they are the foundation of that, and everybody along the way had a role in it. It's not just the origins that create that. It's everybody who contributed, whoever was a part of it, wherever they were. You know what I'm saying? It takes a lot. It takes more than two to tango. I mean, it's like it takes a lot of people to make this thing what it is today. But they were a key element, and you can feel it when you go. So this is just a shout out to the people that pulled up. I wish more people could have pulled up, but people got lives and responsibilities and all that, so I understand. But really, like, make an effort, guys. Like, this is huge, crucial part in history. And they're still with us, man. Come on, let's get this. Let's connect. Much love, y'all. Peace.